Let's get into it. So, who is going to be the next ruling party of England?
Drum roll, please.
I am delighted, as always, to be joined by Steve Swift, who gives us the scope of things happening in the UK, as many things have been happening in the UK, many parts of Europe, certainly here in Canada. The world is in a tizzy, as it were, and England is experiencing that in its own very special way right now at the top parliamentary levels. Less than 2 years after winning a landslide election, Keir Starmer is taking his leave. Steve, thanks for joining us. How have you been?
I've been top hole, thank you. And all of that pip. And
thank you for legitimizing.
I'm all right. It's an extraordinary situation, and we're in a kind of, well, nothing's happening at the moment, so we're in a bit of a honeymoon period. But it's kind of, people are thinking, just look what we could have. Just look at the delights we could have. But it's a bit strange. It is our sixth Prime Minister in, is it 10 years?
I believe it's less than that. I think it's closer to 9. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Correct us
Yeah.
But yeah, you've certainly had a high turnover there. You have more turnover in your parliament than we do at Tim Hortons here on a staffing front on average. But put that aside, let's try to examine it for a minute. I mean, Starmer came in like guns a-blazing, huge support, the nation expecting so many things. And like I say, less than 2 years later, what did this? Was this personality? Was this actual policy? How did we end up here, Steve?
Well, I think the people of Britain forgot what they voted for, which was, let's just get the Tories and Rishi Sunak out. You know, they wanted somebody who was a manager. So, you know, they wanted a 1945 Clement Attlee manager. He's nothing like that. But they wanted somebody who could steady the ship. They didn't want that kind of, well, the Tories have had so many different prime ministers. We need somebody who can just take it easy. He got a massive majority in the House. He always looked to me, I think I mentioned this to you before, that like he was faintly apologetic and that he was worried that something was going to happen.
Right.
And I think it's certainly on my social media feeds, I generally talk to people who wouldn't be fans of the Labour Party and wouldn't be fans of Keir Starmer. And the general feeling is that he doesn't do anything. He hasn't done anything. He's done an enormous amount, and the party has done an enormous amount. I mean, the list is huge, but they've just not got the word out. And the general dissatisfaction of can't feel that in my pocket, can't, you know, and events as well, you know, wars and that kind of thing. But he didn't sell it well enough. And he's not the kind of big character that we needed.
I do think part of this is personality. I do think there's a certain amount of strategy that could have been put into place to find somebody that maybe the right personality up against Starmer at that time might have also had a landslide, depending. I think you're right. The nation wanted a change. They were tired of the merry-go-round, and they wanted something just to change that might stop that pattern. I think we see that in many parts of the world. One of the things that comes to mind is that if he had sort of interacted a little better from a PR perspective, posting what the Labour Party had done, where they had gotten to, and what kind of achievements were coming about. But that was not enough, as you say, up against an economy that is suffering so hard right now, social media that is easily, you can fertilize so much idiotic and inaccurate social media with people just being broke. You know, so I think that was part of the dilemma there.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know who was in his team to give us the good news, because we never got it. So it was always reactive. So if someone said, "Well, you're doing this," they would say, no, but we've put this in place. And then people would say, oh, have you? Oh,
Yeah, I
okay.
didn't know that. Okay, that changes the perspective a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, but he didn't do
I
it
think
enough.
that was desperately needed by this party, I think, from day one, that they had a strong press personality. Because as you point out, Starmer himself is a little bit lacking in charisma, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's a lawyer. He's a human. He's a lawyer. So, or a solicitor, and I think that kind of will steady the ship feel. And very early on, and we had this with Tony Blair's government actually, only in a different way. He
Mm.
came in, had a huge majority, and then said, "Well." It did the usual thing of, well, we've been left no money by the Tories, so there's very little we can do. That was
Right.
early on, and what the country is desperately in need of, or was desperately in need of, was somebody to say, "Come on, things are going to be okay," and we might be getting that now.
Maybe. Now, here's the thing: you do have financial stress. Britain is under extreme financial stress in many ways, much like we are here in Canada. You're facing what is outrageous inflation. Unemployment is at new highs. Yes, there are new trade deals being created around the world that are unsure. Really, whoever takes over does have a challenge. I don't know, and I think once again, the same deal here in Canada. Any party to take over the debt of the previous party post COVID, post economic slashing globally, realignment after what's happening with Trump. Anybody who comes into power is faced with some real challenges. How do you think whoever comes into power now is going to be faced with the Brits?
It, they've got very, very little wiggle room, as you say. You quite rightly encapsulated it very well. They've got such little wiggle room, and people always say, well, you can pull the levers of power, but if you pull one and nothing happens, what do you do? Or if you pull one and it stops, what do you do? And he's got whoever comes in, and I think it will be a he. We'll talk about this in a minute, I'm sure. You've got very little room. So what you need is someone with a personality to make us feel good. So even if we feel that I can't go and afford another holiday, or I couldn't afford to remodel my house, or I can't even afford some of the basics. But when I see that bloke on TV, I feel better.
What are the issues that you think before we get? And I think that we're not going to be able to make a bet on who comes to power. I think, Steve, unfortunately. But what do you think the major challenges? What's on the minds of Brits right now? What's the top focused issues? I'll give you some examples. Here in Canada, the economy is one, housing is one. Another one is crime and safety. Where do you sit?
Um, Most of the items you just mentioned, yes, are live issues for us, but linked to migration and reform, being a party that's coming up from behind, not doing as well as they thought they might. But we'll talk more about that maybe later on. But the economy, housing, jobs, seen through the prism of the kind of immigration situation, migration situation, and with a really kind of polarized reform on one side, Greens on the other, acceptable right wing, acceptable left wing, and Labour and the Tories in the middle, with a two-party system. Okay, there's Lib Dems, but with a two-party system that isn't really working at the moment. So as far as the economy goes, we have a GDP that's not performing. It's performing badly, but it's not performing as badly as some other countries we could describe or we could compare to. But things like NEETs, young people not in education, training, or employment, that's huge. We're getting reports from actually ex Blairite cabinet ministers saying education is not good, NEETs are not good, and there's a feeling of a police being underfunded,